Hi, I'm Cody Gurman, and I'm with Spectrum Channel 4, and today I'm going to Kentucky Gateway Museum to check out the teacups and tools.
Hello, my name is Marla Toncray, and I'm the exhibits curator here at the Kentucky Gateway Museum Center in Maysville, Kentucky. Today we're talking to you about our latest exhibit in the Wormald Gallery, and the title of this exhibit is Teacups and Tools. From the title itself, you would gather that you would expect to see teacups in this exhibit as well as tools, which you do. But the exhibit highlights much more than just a teacup and a saucer or just a tool that you would use on the farm or in a blacksmith shop. The concept of this exhibit is to highlight the tools that men and women used in their everyday lives, at home, on the farm, and in the workplace. And the artifacts that are on display take a date range from roughly the 1850s up to about 1920. And all the artifacts in this exhibit are from the collection here at the Museum Center. They are items that have been donated to us by people in this region over the years, and so we have brought them out to highlight the ordinary tools that men and women used in their ordinary lives. We start here, we start with the teacups concept. We have a lovely silver tea service on a Virginia tilt-top tea table, and then you have a teacup and saucer with linens sitting here, so you get the essence of the lady of the house sitting down for her afternoon tea and getting ready to entertain a guest. And then you go to the contrast of something as delicate and refined as your teacups to the rudimentary tools that they used out on the farm. This particular panel has a scythe that they use to cut hay out in the field. There's a sickle here, and then this is actually a lawnmower that was probably dates to about the 1860s, and shows you the very basic ways that early lawn mowing machine, quite different than what you envision today with the motor and the wheels, and this was all pushed by hand. And so you get the contrast of what the ordinary tools looked like and how they were used. This particular case behind me has a collection of hat pins, and it's got a picture of some ladies in their hats, in their big Easter bonnets. It also has irons that you use to iron your clothes. There's one here that you would put charcoal in it, and then you would stand there and press your clothes. There's also an interesting fireplace toaster. And so you would put your bread inside this fireplace toaster, and you would place it over the fire, and then you would flip it over to get the other side toasted. So it just gives you a very good visual of the difference of how we go about doing things today and how people did things, 100 years ago. So we'll move to the next cabinet, and we'll talk about some of the other articles that are in there. In this area of the exhibit, we have a display of sewing items. Again, these items came from our collection, and I find them to be very interesting. We actually have a small Singer sewing machine in this exhibit. This sewing machine was sold by the Singer Manufacturing Company, and it was designed for young girls to use and to make their doll clothes on. And this learning skill of learning how to sew their doll clothes was a skill that transferred to them as they became a teenager, and then obviously as they became a mother and a wife, learning how to sew and make their family's clothing. So this is an actual working sewing machine in here. We have a picture of a dress shop that was directly across the street here at 214 Sutton Street, and so it ties in the concept of being a seamstress. There is a display of sewing machine tools here and attachments that you would use to do ruffles and all types of different things. People that are familiar with sewing would know what I'm talking about with the attachments for your sewing machine. And then we have just a collection of some fabrics and some lace and other sewing items here. And this corresponds, of course, to the dress form that we've got on display. This is an antique dress form. It is expandable, and so it can get bigger or smaller as to the measurements of the client, and so that ties this area together. We also have in this particular cabinet some of your household items that you would use. For example, right up here is an egg scale. And when you look at this, when you get closer to it, you can see that you would set your egg on the scale, and then according to the weight of the egg, it tells you if it's a large, medium, or small egg. I had never seen one of those, so I thought that was quite interesting. And then there are some spices that you would have found in the kitchen, that, you know, ordinary spices that the woman in the house would use. Over here, we start this case, there's a baby dress and a baby blanket. So this goes to the maternal side of, you know, having a pregnant woman and a mother having her child. We've got a hairbrush and comb for a little baby. We have a really adorable little set of rose-colored baby shoes that are just so sweet. This is the surgical kit. This surgical kit came from R.N. Taylor. This was his pathology instrument case, and this dates to 1875. This is Russell and Key's tracheotomy aspirator and trocar instruments here. This surgical case dates to 1850, and this actually has the amputation saw in this case. There's a strap in here that would have been used for the tourniquet, and then of course there's surgical knives here and a probe. These are braces that would have been worn by a child with polio. These date to the 1940s. And there's a photograph of Joseph Salk, who was introduced the polio vaccine. And so that further enhances the medical. And then this is a selection of medicines that you would use around the household. There's Epsom salts, there's Sloan's family liniment in here, there's a foot balm, there's a bottle of glycerin. So it again illustrates these ordinary tools that the woman of the house would have had around for medical emergencies to clean your cuts and bruises and that type of thing. Vicks Vapor Rub, we all are familiar with Vicks Vapor Rub. So again, when I talk about the concept of tools, it goes outside that realm of what you would automatically think of as a tool, like a hammer or a nail or a saw. These are all the things that they would have used at home. This is obviously a beautiful oriental print fan and set with a teacup and saucer with an oriental pattern on it. The lady of the house, of course, would be having her tea, and if it was a warm day, she'd have her fan out to keep a little breeze going and keep her cool. So again, that is shows the variety of the items that we've got on display. In this area of the exhibit, we highlight tools that a cobbler would have used. A cobbler is a person that built shoes. We've got the stand here, a cobbler stand with the last on top of it. The last is actually the mold that they would use to build the shoe around. There are different size of last here. So it would appear to be, you know, a man's, and then the smaller one would be a woman's or a child's, and then there's an even smaller one that you would certainly relate to being a children's shoe. There is a soldering iron down here tied to the blacksmith trade. Again, more teacups and serving pieces so that when you had guests over and you were serving your petit fours and your little Benedictine cakes and whatnot, you would put these on these platters to serve to your guests. This item here is called a stone hammer. This would have been used out in a rock quarry or in the trade of building stone walls or the stone roads. And so they would literally, that was used to break the stone into the pieces and to the size that they wanted. This is what's called a draw knife. This is used in the woodworking industry. It's a hand tool that is used to shape wood by removing the shavings. So that is called a draw knife. This box here might be a little hard to see the candles inside since they're burgundy, but this box in this corner is what's called a candle box. This is a reproduction done by a local person here. This box would hang on your wall, and you would fill it with your candles, and then the panel would slide up, and when you needed to get a new candle, you just lifted up the panel and you took one of your candles out. So that was your candle box. Obviously, we've got candelabra here, another fan. We've got a shawl down here. It's another tool that a woman would use, you know, to have her shawl around her to keep her shoulders warm during the cooler nights. So that is what this area holds. There's also a picture of a local blacksmith shop that used to be in Sardis, Kentucky. It was Elijah and Grover Maston black shop out in Sardis. So again, we do have the photographs interspersed with the display. In this case, we have a chamber set. This was a donation to us that came in about 2 years ago. This dates to 1912. So this is what was used in the master bedroom. This is a very elegant chamber set. This is the chamber pot. This is what you would use to go to the bathroom. You have a shaving mug down here. You've got a small water pitcher here. You've got a soap dish here. And then you've got what appears to be a toothbrush holder. Then you have on the bottom your large bowl and your large pitcher. This is where you bathed. This is where you would have cleaned off and taken your washcloth and dipped it into the bowl and wash and freshen up, and then the fresh water would be in the pitcher, and then you would dispose of the dirty water and then fill it up with the fresh water and finish off your bath. So this dates, like I said, to 1912. This ensemble here was a wedding gift to a couple for in that particular year, and then the family members decided to donate to us. So this certainly gives you a different visual on what it took to get ready and to do your morning hygiene routine. There's some fans again here. We've got some ladies' gloves on display, several teacups again, and plates dispersed throughout. This particular area further goes along with your personal grooming, that we have a selection of shaving tools. There's a strope in here, a leather strope that was used to sharpen your razor blade. There's a shaving mug. There's a dressing stone, which is also used to sharpen your razor blades. There's a mirror that you would have used. There's also a mustache comb in here. And then over in this corner is a selection of Gillette razor blades. And they're very interesting. The writing here has a picture of Mr. Gillette on it, and then underneath it says King Gillette. And these were called the Blue Blade. So we've got those interspersed. You've got a cast iron kettle. And then this particular item here kind of moves to your transportation mode. We've got what would be a carriage light or a railroad light here. But this particular item lying on its side is what's called a foot warmer. This is made of metal. It is covered with a piece of carpet. You would put hot coals inside here, and then this would go with you in the stagecoach as you traveled, and you would put your feet on this. This particular foot warmer came from the stagecoach that ran between Maysville and Mount Sterling. Interspersed with the cabinets, we have our wall panels in this exhibit that are hung with farm tools. On this particular panel, we have 3 implements on display. And Brian McHugh, who does our facilities maintenance here and assists with setting up of our exhibits, was a bit of an artist here, hanging all the farm tools. He incorporated the square-headed nails and took the twine and frayed it to give it that feeling of being out in the barn, and you know, these things are what you use day in and day out. This is what's called a bill hook. Not being a farm girl myself, I'm not very familiar with all the farm tools, But this is a bill hook, and this is used for cutting green wood. So I would have to assume that green wood is a little harder to cut than dried up wood, and so there must be something about the shape of the blade that helps get that chore accomplished a little faster. This is a hay knife. It does have a step right here, so you can envision using this and putting the blade down into your hay bale, and then using your foot, you apply your pressure, and so you would cut your hay bale in half. This is a set of ice tongs that you would have seen at an ice house. I know today we're also accustomed to going to the convenience store or the grocery store and getting a bag of ice when you need to fill up a cooler, or just getting ice out of your freezer at home. But it used to be in the day that you would go literally to the ice house to get your ice, and they would use these tongs to bring them up and to get them out to you and for transport and whatnot. Brian, again, being rather crafty, has taken an acrylic box here, and so we've made what would be an ice cube here to give you the visual effect. This case highlights apothecary items, all of which were donated to us by the Greenwell family. Greenwell's Pharmacy was a staple here in Maysville for many generations and was once located on Market Street. So we've got a selection of measuring beakers here. There's a collection of medical bottles. One of them is called Caraway, and it says it's twice rectified. There's a old fennel seed. There's a bottle of old fennel seed. It's 1 ounce. There's old pine needle here. So I'm not exactly sure what those were all used for, but they were obviously part of the medical scene at one time. And then we've got other items from the pharmacy down here, as well as a print of an old apothecary shop. We have again another selection of teacups. We've got a mortar and pestle. This is a hand corn husker. So this was used on your hand to husk corn. We've got a set of wire cutters in here, and then there's 3 or 4 meat hooks down here that would have been used out in your smokehouse. And again, you know, you've got these very harsh tools intermixed here with this very delicate tea service to give you that contrast of, at one moment you might be out, and the lady of the house would have been there too. You're out in the field, possibly, you know, tending to your garden or you're sewing, and you're doing these regular household tasks, you're doing your laundry, and then you sit down from that type of thing to a very delicate and very serene ritual of having your tea in the afternoon. Over here we've got a glove stretcher, and there's a selection of gloves here, so that you would put the stretcher into your gloves so that it was nice and ready for you when you got ready to put your hands in there. They weren't too tight. And then for those people in the area that remember Merz Brothers department store, that store was in business from like 1900 on. It was a very popular department store located here in downtown Maysville. We have some photographs on display from the interior of the Merz Brothers department store that dates 1915. And those of us that don't go back quite to 1915 to remember the interior of the store, we do remember though going shopping with our mother, and she would go up to the cash register and the sales clerk would take their money or a credit card, and they would send it up to the accounting office in a money changer, and they'd send it up in one of those tubes, and then they would send it back down with the change and your receipt. So we've got a money changer that came out of the Merz Brothers department store too. So there's just a wide variety of items here. It does show the diversity of the tools needed to run a household and to manage your everyday life. And we encourage you to come down and see us. This exhibit will be up until the middle of November, and it will come down at that time as we change out for our nativity scenes from near and far that we have up for the Christmas holiday season.